System+Reverse Heavenly Gang+Offense Below plus Laughter plus Farming plus Stratagem plus Explosive Soldier Colonization. A modern angry young man named Fang Jun has an accident and his soul pierces through the Tang Dynasty, becoming Fang Xuanling's second son, Fang's last love. In order to make Li Er cancel his marriage and prevent himself from being covered in a vast expanse of green grassland, he could only fight to death, dancing at the tip of his sword and repeatedly jumping horizontally on the edge of life and death. Princess Gaoyang. Father, Fang Jun is not a fool at all, big stick hammer. He has a lot of blossoming on his body. Xiao Sizi said, Father, since my sister doesn't like her brother. Law, let him be the husband of Cizi. Wei Pengzi. Fang Jun is truly a role model for our generation. Yingda. Fang Jun's poetry is unparalleled, his literary talent is unparalleled. The only regret is that his poetry is either insulting or satirical. It really goes against the way of a gentleman. The aristocratic family said, Erlang, when doing business, you should bring us along. This book is also known as the Tang Dynasty. This son. Law loves to die. At the beginning of chapter 1, give Changsun Wuji a big challenge. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. In the 10th year of the Zhenguan reign of the Tang Dynasty, in March, spring. Chang'an City. The east wind brushes against the face and combs the willows, while the grass grows and the flowers bloom green, reflecting red. Another year of lush grass and once again spring flowers bloom. The sunshine is bright, the spring breeze is gentle, and Chang'an City, which has been silent for a cold winter, has regained its former liveliness and prosperity. Unlike everyone immersed in the joy of spring, the mansion of Fang Xuanling, the official minister of the court, was filled with melancholy and despair, with chickens flying and dogs jumping around. A few days ago, the second son of the Fang family, Fang Yai, had fallen from a horse while drunk and had been unconscious for 2 days. After being treated by the imperial physician, he finally woke up, but he was foolish and his behavior was different from that of ordinary people. Seeing their own son looking like this, it really drove Fang Xuanling and Lu Shi crazy. The whole family in the mansion was worried all day long, and even dared not show their grandeur, fearing that it would displease the master's family and harm the fish in the pond. In a wing room in the inner courtyard of the mansion, a young man of about 15 or 6 years old, with a slightly black skin, handsome features, and a sturdy figure, with a simple and honest face, was standing by the window, staring out at a cluster of green grass swaying in the wind in a daze. If someone were to approach at this moment, they would definitely hear the stunned young man whispering incessantly. Oh my goodness, I just got drunk and slept on the main road. Why did I cross to the Tang Dynasty? You said let's just travel through this time, why did you still travel to this eternal love of the Green Hat King's house? What a sin. That's right, this young man who is daydreaming and constantly muttering is Fang Erlang. Fang Yai, but he prefers others to call him another name. Fang Jun. However, this Fang Jun is not that Fang Jun. Because at this moment, the soul occupying this body is from a 21st century, more precisely, he is a modern traveler. At this moment, Fang Jun looked at the cluster of green grass outside the window, feeling very dazzling. He now has a feeling that this green color may become the main theme of his future life. Who is the last love of this house? Anyone with a little bit of common sense in later generations will know that this kid's head is like a vast expanse of green grassland, and he deserves the title of Eternal Green Hat King. His own princess wife and defense monk are causing trouble in the room, but he is helpless and helps to keep the door open outside. Even a slightly bloodthirsty man wouldn't do such a foolish thing. Erlang, the master is waiting for you in the hall. He said he has something important to discuss with Erlang. Just as he was cursing, the door was gently pushed open, and a beautiful and petite little maid walked in with small steps, a nervous expression on her face, and said in a crisp voice. Okay, I got it. I'm going now. Fang Jun glanced at the little girl with a reluctant expression on his face. This young maid, who is about 13 or 14 years old, is his personal maid named Xiao. Upon hearing these words, Xiao's face lit up with joy. Her own Erlang had been unconscious for 2 days, but after finally waking up, she ignored everyone and appeared to reject others from thousands of miles away, saying incomprehensible nonsense all day long. Now that he can actually take care of himself, it seems that Erlang's physical condition has started to improve. With a joyful expression on her face, she briskly ran out of the room and reported good news to the master and lady. "What's this girl smoking so well?" Fang Jun saw the little girl's surprised expression and pursed his lips. Then, he walked out of the room and slowly walked towards the front courtyard hall. As soon as he arrived at the lobby of the front yard, he saw his cheap father Fang Xuanling looking at him with a concerned expression on his face, with an expression of reluctance to speak. "Which song is this old man singing?" Upon seeing this, Fang Jun immediately looked puzzled. I don't know what's going on when I calls for the child to come over." He couldn't help but feel curious and asked. "Seeing that Erlang is unharmed, being a father makes me feel at ease." Fang Xuanling looked up and down at his Erlang and saw that his eyes were clear and his behavior was not as foolish as the previous 2 days. The worries in his heart immediately dissipated. Then, with a smile on his face, he said, "Erlang, you're already big and big. It's time to take it easy. In 2 months, it's your wedding day with Princess Gaoyang. In these 2 months, you can go to the Imperial Academy to study and behave well. Don't let your Majesty and Princess down." "What? Are you going to marry Princess Gaoyang in 2 months?" Upon hearing this news, Fang Jun's slightly black face turned pale, and a loud bang in his mind sounded like a thunderbolt, numbing his scalp and making him feel cold. "This damn thing. Come whatever you're afraid of. Is this my destiny in this life, Fang Jun? No way. Gaoyang, we absolutely cannot marry." Thinking of this, he wiped away the tears that didn't exist at the corner of his eyes and said with a look of grievance, My child really doesn't want to marry Princess Gaoyang. If I have to make my child marry a princess, can I plead with your Majesty and let's change the princess? You rebellious son. Princess Gaoyang is gentle and elegant, with such a noble status. Do you still dislike this and that? Are you looking for a new princess? Do you think you're buying cabbage at the market and want to be picky? Fang Xuanling scolded angrily when she saw her own son say such nonsense. Ding, it has been detected that the host is entering the Gang mode, and the system is activating and binding. Ding, the system has been activated and bound. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out in Fang Jun's mind. System. The essential golden finger for the traveler has finally arrived. Upon hearing this sound, Fang Jun was so excited that he almost jumped up. But what does this Gang mode mean? How does this system feel a bit mediocre? This system is called the Gang system. As long as you challenge or confront someone, you can earn points. The higher the opponent's identity, the richer the reward. Before he could ask a question, another voice rang in his mind. What? Is it a system that connects people with precision? How does this give people an unreliable feeling? At this moment, Fang Jun was stunned. In later generations, he liked to argue with others because of his bad breath. Although he had outstanding abilities and outstanding performance, he was disliked by his superiors and colleagues. Therefore, after struggling for more than 10 years, he only managed to get into the position of deputy manager. He detests his habit of constantly pushing others around, and after struggling to live a lifetime, he has made up his mind to change the past. However, he never expected that God would play such a big joke on him. You can get rewards by arguing with others, this is just nonsense. In this feudal society where monarchy is paramount, standing up against others and disobeying your father is like hanging the longevity star gong. Disrespectful of his long life. However, if I don't argue and accept everything, then I guess we have already married Princess Gaoyang. Thinking of this, he gritted his teeth, his heart turned red, and he said solemnly, if I insist that the child marry Princess Gaoyang, then the child will shave his head and become a monk, cutting off the tradition of incense in the old house. What? Shaving and becoming a monk? Let Fang Jia cut off the incense. Upon hearing this, Fang Xuanling was so angry that her beard trembled and the corners of her mouth twitched. Look, what is this silly guy saying? You are not the only child in my old family. Even if you become a monk, isn't there still your elder brother? Ha ha ha. Just as the father and son were arguing, a mocking burst of laughter suddenly came from beside them. Fang Jun quickly turned his head and found a slightly chubby middle-aged man sitting on the nearby stool, looking at him with a smile on his face. You old kid, just laugh your butt out. Fang Jun suddenly became angry and rushed forward with a swift step. He raised his hand and shouted with a big mouth. After a loud bang, the entire hall fell into a deathly silence. The chubby middle-aged man covered his hot and chubby cheeks, his eyes wide open and his face full of disbelief. You rebellious son. You've gone crazy. You dare to fight even Duke Xiao. At this moment, Fang Xuanling was furious when he saw this scene. What? The old boy in front of me is actually the cunning old pussy of Changsun Wuji. Upon hearing these words, Fang Jun couldn't help but lose his color in shock, and his heart felt a chill. Previously, he thought this chubby old man was in charge of household affairs, but unexpectedly, he was the eldest grandson of the current national uncle, Wuji. Chapter 2. Accompanying you like a tiger. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. It's not surprising that he can't recognize it. His mind is a mess now, and the memories of the original owner have not fully fused with him. Zhao Guogong understands that this villain is just a fool. Zhao Guogong has a large number of people, so he probably won't argue with a foolish person, right? Although Fang Xuanling was furious at this moment, he couldn't help it. No matter how foolish the fool in front of him was, he was also Fang Xuanling's son. This son did something wrong, and as an old man, he naturally has to wipe his own son's butt. At this moment, Changsun Wuji was slapped in the face by a younger generation, and his heart was naturally filled with anger. However, he also knew that the young master of the Fang family had a simple and straightforward personality. Who in Chang'an City didn't know that the young man in front of him had an ungrateful and big hammer-like temperament? Being a Grand Duke of my own country, if I were to compete with a fool, wouldn't it make people laugh out loud? Thinking of this, Changsun Wuji had no choice but to suppress the anger that had just risen. He stood up, arched his hand at Fang Xuanling, and said with an unpleasant expression, Fang Xiang, there is something important in the mansion, so I won't disturb you. After speaking, before Fang Xuanling could respond, he left with a gloomy and angry expression on his face. Why are you so resistant to this marriage, you scoundrel? You should know that Princess Gaoyang is one of His Majesty's most beloved princesses. If you become her husband in the future, you will surely be able to enjoy endless wealth and prosperity for a lifetime. Fang Xuanling looked at Changsun Wuji's angry expression and couldn't help but let out a deep sigh in his heart. Then, he turned his head and looked at his silly son in front of him, earnestly persuading him. That's not right. Fang Jun looked disdainful upon hearing the words. Our Fang family is also considered a prestigious family. Gui is the current regent, and my elder sister is the Princess of Han. With the current reputation and influence of our Fang family, even if our child doesn't become that son.in.law, he can still live a prosperous life. You. Fang Xuanling was choked and unable to speak. Although his own Erlang's words may seem like a jerk, upon careful consideration, they make sense. With his current status as Fang Xuanling and the power of his family, even if his son doesn't become a son.in.law, he can still live a carefree and prosperous life. But the problem is, this is the marriage bestowed by His Majesty himself. If his family dares to withdraw from the marriage, it will be slapping His Majesty in the face. What's going on? Don't you even look up to my princess? Accompanying you is like accompanying a tiger. The raging anger of this emperor is not something his family can bear. You rebellious son, how dare you even talk back? Look at me, I won't kill you. Thinking of the tragic consequences of the Fang family being brutally executed if we don't respect the imperial decree, he couldn't help but feel angry. He raised his hand and grabbed a chicken feather duster next to him, then fiercely whipped at the foolish guy in front of him. Fang Jun is not really foolish, how could he stand there foolishly and let him fight? He just wanted to let go and ran. As soon as he turned his head, he saw a woman outside the hall, who was about 40 years old, slightly chubby, with a beautiful face and an incredibly strong momentum, rushing in from the outside. Upon seeing this woman, Fang Jun was immediately overjoyed. It seems that heaven will not destroy me, and his savior has finally arrived. Fang Xuanling, do you dare to hit my son and give it a try? The woman saw this scene and quickly walked into the hall, shouting coquettishly. Then, she pulled Fang Jun, who looked aggrieved, behind her. Madam, as the saying goes, a kind mother often defeats a child. You are so accustomed to this rebellious son, and you have harmed him and the entire Fang family. Seeing this, Fang Xuanling was so angry that he almost lost his breath. That's right, this beautiful and dignified woman is Fang Xuanling's hair-tied wife. Lu Shi. Fang Xuanling, I see you're a fool. What Erlang said earlier was absolutely right. With the current status of our Fang family, it's enough to ensure that he has no worries for a lifetime. Why bother letting Erlang marry into the royal family and suffer from the princess's anger? Lu Shi, facing her husband's accusations, seemed to have not heard of it. What do you understand as a woman? Now that your majesty has issued an edict to marry, if Erlang refuses, have you both considered the consequences of disobeying the edict? Fang Xuanling was almost taken aback by the anger of the mother and son in front of her. When Lu heard these two words of rebellion, he was immediately stunned. Today, Li Shimin is a ruthless person who dares to kill even his brothers for the sake of the throne. If his own Erlang angers him, how could this end be better? Erlang, why don't you listen to your father's advice? We won't lose out if we marry a princess. If we refuse to marry, it will anger the current emperor, and our Fang family may be in danger of annihilation. With this in mind, Lu Shi turned to look at her own Erlang and earnestly advised. In this society where monarchy is paramount, openly disobeying the emperor is definitely a suicidal act. It is definitely not possible to openly resist the decree, but if the emperor were to retract the decree of marriage, it should not involve himself and the entire Fang family, right? Fang Jun's eyes lit up as he thought of this, and he quickly nodded at his own mother. Upon seeing this scene, Fang Xuanling and Lu finally breathed a sigh of relief. In their view, it must be their persuasion that just now had an effect. After lunch, Fang Jun returned to his room, closed the door, sat at the table, and his consciousness sank into his mind. Ding. Opponent. Fang Xuanling, identity. Shangshu's Wapush, identity level. A. Earn points. 3 points. Ding. The person being scolded. Changsun Wuji, identity. Shangshu Yupeash, current state uncle, identity level. A. Level, earned points. 4 points. As soon as his consciousness sank into his mind, the sound of the system's announcement rang in his mind. After listening to the sound of the system's broadcast, Fang Jun suddenly felt a bit confused. Is it because this identity still has added value? You should know that there is no distinction between high and low ranks among the left and right ministers of the Tang Dynasty, and they are all of the second rank. But in terms of power, the exercise of power by this left servant is even higher than that of the right servant, but his father's point of being scolded is actually 1 point lower than that of Changsun Wuji's old Ying coercion. It seems that the problem should lie in the identity of Changsun Wuji as the current imperial uncle. System, what's the use of this point? Fang Jun asked. The host can use points to redeem items they need in the redemption store. The rarer the item, the higher the points it consumes. As soon as the words were spoken, the sound of the system echoed in his mind. Open the exchange shop. Fang Jun excitedly gave the order. Starting store panel. Store panel successfully launched. Soon, a huge electronic screen came to mind in his mind. There are countless items on the electronic screen, a dazzling array of items, such as commonly seen spicy strips, milk tea, and so on in later generations. Holy crap, this bag of spicy strips costs 200 points, and a cup of milk tea costs 300 points. Is this system so cumbersome? Fang Jun looked at the 7 points displayed on the balance in the upper left corner of the system panel and felt like crying without tears. How many times do you have to fight someone to save enough points for a cup of milk tea? Chapter 3. What? Is she Gaoyang? My future princess wife. You are listening at novelfull.audio. That's not right. I am currently in the Tang Dynasty, and I am still thinking about drinking milk tea and eating spicy strips. First, let's take a look at whether there are potatoes or high-yield grain varieties that are the key. At this moment, Fang Jun wished he could give himself 2 big mouths and quickly searched the screen. Soon, he saw the icons of sweet potatoes and potatoes in a small corner of the screen. This system is really amazing. With these 2 options as a reliance, as long as you don't die and follow the rebellion, you can ensure that the house family will have no worries for 3 generations. What? 1 pound of potatoes costs 1,000 points. 1 kilogram of sweet potatoes costs 1,200 points. Is this system designed to entertain me? I estimate that by the time I gather enough of these 1,000 points, the grave grass will probably be over 10 feet tall, right? When Fang Jun's gaze turned to how many points were needed to redeem, he was so angry that he almost jumped. Is this system too cumbersome? This clay figurine has a 3rd degree of anger. It's okay to scold people once or twice. If you get scolded too much, can you still survive? This is like dancing on the tip of a knife, repeatedly jumping horizontally on the edge of life and death. Alas, relying on the mountain will fall, relying on people will run. This system doesn't seem very reliable either, ultimately it has to rely on itself. Fang Jun sighed and exited the system, his consciousness returning to reality. The next morning, in the morning. Dong dong dong. Fang Jun was sleeping soundly when suddenly a hurried knocking on the door pulled him back from his dream to reality. Who is it? This is. What are you knocking on so early in the morning? Fang Jun, who had been disturbed by his dream, immediately became angry and roared towards the door. Erlang, it's me, Xiao. Erlang, get up quickly. It's time to start school, and if you don't get up again, you won't be able to catch up. Soon, the voice of Xiao, a close maid, came from outside the door with a hint of urgency and fear. Entering school. Upon hearing this, Fang Jun was taken aback and immediately remembered that he was going to attend a class at the Imperial Academy today. I am a graduate of a prestigious university, but now that I have come to this Tang Dynasty, I still have to go to school. What have I done? Fang Jun helplessly got up from the bed and walked to the door of the room, pulling the latch open. Xiao, standing outside the room with a basin of hot water for washing, quickly walked in. I'll do it myself. You go back to your own room and sleep for a while longer. Fang Jun looked at this girl because she came too early. At this moment, her delicate face was flushed with cold, and he quickly grabbed the copper plate in his hand and said. Although it's already March, it's still a bit cold in the morning. Isn't Erlang disliking Xiao? Can't you make Xiao leave? Xiao saw this and her face was red and flushed, instantly turning pale with fear. Her delicate body trembled slightly. What nonsense are you talking about? I despise our Xiao heir, and no one can despise us. Fang Jun saw this girl react so strongly, and his lips twitched, quickly speaking out to comfort her. Since Erlang doesn't dislike Xiao, let Xiao serve Erlang to clean up. Xiao smiled happily upon hearing this. Oh, forget it. Who let themselves wear into this wicked old society? This Xiao is my personal maid. If I don't let her serve me, this maid will definitely not be at ease. Fang Jun could only accept this with a bitter smile on his face. A quarter of an hour later, Fang Jun, who had finished grooming and dressing up, looked at himself in the bronze mirror and was very satisfied. Although the original owner had a slightly darker skin color, these facial features were indeed indescribable. His sword eyebrows were starry, his nose was like a hanging gallbladder, and his lips were particularly thick and thin, with a perfect lip shape. If it were placed in later generations, it would not be an exaggeration to say that he was a killer of young girls and women. In the Tang Dynasty, where men like to wear hairpins and makeup, his slightly black skin color clearly does not conform to the aesthetic concept of this era. Alright, young master, stop looking. Time is running out. Xiao, who was standing beside her, watched her Erlang procrastinate and looked left and right at the bronze mirror. She could only helplessly remind her again. After looking around for a moment, Fang Jun walked out of the room and arrived at the lobby of the front yard. He casually took a few bites and walked out of the mansion. As soon as he arrived at the door, he saw a servant from the mansion leading a black steed, eagerly waiting for him. He quickly walked over and flipped over to mount his horse, his movements flowing smoothly and decisively. His muscular memory was so profound, indicating that the original owner's riding skills were definitely not inferior. Then, following the vague memory in his mind, he identified the direction and hurried towards the Guozijian. The Guozijian is located in the north first block of the 2nd Street east of Zukman Street. Wuban Block, adjacent to the Imperial City to the north and Tongan Gate to the northwest. The Imperial Academy was the highest educational institution in the Tang Dynasty, and only the royal relatives and noble children could enter it to study. It was extremely difficult for ordinary people to enter. Oh, Erlang, when did you become so diligent? You came even earlier than me. Fang Jun arrived at the entrance of the Guozijian and handed his horse to the gatekeeper. He raised his foot and prepared to walk inside. Just then, a man's teasing voice suddenly came from behind him. Fang Jun quickly turned his head and followed the sound, only to see a chubby and extravagantly dressed young man looking at him with a playful smile on his face. Is this Li Tai, the king of Wei? Fang Jun pondered for a moment before thinking about this person's identity. It seems that according to historical records, the deceased love of this house had no education and was quite powerful. He befriended King Li Tai of Wei, and most likely it was true. Look at the fat guy in front of me making all sorts of jokes about me. The relationship between the original owner and him is definitely extraordinary. His Highness the King of Wei laughed and said, "My Fang Jun is uneducated and has a reputation for being a fool and a big hammer. No one knows this Chang'an city, and no one knows it. In fact, I don't want to come either. It's all because of ice coercion." Fang Jun quickly bowed to the fat man in front of him and smiled foolishly. Humph. Finally, someone still has self-awareness and knows that their reputation is already bad on the street. Just then, a female voice as pleasant as a yellow warbler coming out of the valley came to his ear. Who is this? The sound is so beautiful. Fang Jun quickly looked up and stood there in an instant. I saw a young girl about 15 or 16 years old, dressed in a yellow dress, coming towards us in a graceful manner. This girl's head is tied in black hair, with a slanted phoenix hairpin. Her face is like a silver plate, her eyes are like autumn water, and her two beautiful eyebrows are like a delicate crescent moon. What a stunning beauty! This girl not only has a stunning appearance, but also a stunning figure. Hips big and waist thin, with a crispy chest and a towering figure. As one walks, the mountains rise and fall, as if they are about to break free from constraints and emerge from their clothes in the next moment. For Fang Jun, who has become accustomed to beautiful looks and the same internet celebrity face thousands of times in later generations, this kind of woman with a slight touch of makeup and beauty, just like a fairy, is simply amazing. Humph, dang Tuzi. The young girl saw him staring straight at her, as if she wanted to swallow herself in one gulp. Suddenly, her pretty face was filled with a look of disgust, and she let out a coquettish snort. Her footsteps were full, and she quickly walked into the Imperial Academy like a weak willow supporting the wind. Her pretty figure quickly disappeared. Cough cough. Erlang, don't look anymore. Everyone has left. Look at your virtue, it's really embarrassing. Li Tai looked at Fang Jun with a dementia on his face and quickly coughed a few times, whispering. Your Highness, do you know which girl this was from earlier? She was so stunning. Fang Jun, who had come to his senses, quickly asked in a hurry. I said Fang Erlang, did you really break your mind? You don't even know Gaoyang. Li Tai looked at him up and down, and replied with a surprised expression on his face. What? Is she Gaoyang? My future princess wife. Chapter 4. Sister, I hate this big hammer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is impossible. How could she possibly be Gaoyang? At this moment, when Fang Jun heard Li Tai's words, it was like a bolt from the blue and he couldn't accept it for a moment. Perhaps it was because Princess Gaoyang was too arrogant and domineering, disdaining the original owner, and the original owner subconsciously also had a strong aversion to Gaoyang. Therefore, in the original owner's memory, the impression of Princess Gaoyang was very vague. And that's also the biggest reason why Fang Jun didn't recognize Princess Gaoyang in the first place just now. At this moment, he carefully searched in his mind and finally found some fragments of memories about Princess Gaoyang in the few memories of the original owner. His heart was as dead as ashes, and his just-stirred heart seemed to calm down like an old monk. The newly risen trace of admiration completely dissipated. Even if Gaoyang is truly beautiful like Chang'e in the Guanghan Palace, we cannot marry her. Erlang, why are you so stunned? Hurry up and go in. If this delays your time, be careful not to be punished. Just as Fang Jun was lost in thought and confused, Li Tai, who was standing next to him, quickly grabbed his hand and walked towards the door, saying as he walked. Fang Jun felt his hand being held by a greasy big hand, and instantly regained his senses. He looked down and the corner of his mouth twitched. Nima. What's wrong with this chubby guy? Why did you still hold on to my hand? This chubby guy can't be a fag, can he? Perhaps it's really possible. You should know that their oldly family has genes for good masculinity. Isn't Princely Qingxian a living example? Thinking of this, he quickly withdrew his hand from Li Tai's hand without a trace and sneered, just now, I was distracted for a while and made your highness laugh. Li Tai paid no attention to his actions, dragging his obese body and briskly walking back and forth in the Guozijian. It was obvious that he knew the terrain and layout of the Guozijian very well. At this moment, Fang Jun had a confused and vague memory, and had no idea which classroom he was attending. Therefore, he could only obediently follow closely behind Li Tai, afraid of losing him and making a joke if he couldn't find a place. Imperial Palace, Tai Chi Hall. Dressed in a bright yellow clustered dragon robe and wearing a winged crown, Li Shimin, the emperor of the Tang Dynasty, sat on the dragon chair with a domineering aura that leaked from his side. With a pair of bright and lively tiger eyes, he scanned the group of civil and military officials standing below and asked loudly, I don't know if you all love me, which one is more difficult to start or maintain? Returning to your majesty, I feel that every time a dynasty changes, it is a day of great chaos and the rise of many powerful men. The difficulty of defeating and surrendering them one by one is unimaginable. Therefore, I feel that starting a business is even more difficult. In the queue of civil servants, the left Minister of Personnel, Fang Xuanling, stepped out and arched his hand. Some civil and military officials who once followed Li Shimin to conquer the world nodded slightly in agreement upon hearing this. Fang Xiang's words are not right. Wei Zheng, the provincial attendant under the door, shook his head and stepped out, loudly saying, "The rise of a dynasty must have been during the corruption and decline of the previous dynasty. At this time, as long as you raise your arms and shout, the people will be willing to support you, and everyone in the world will follow suit one after another. This is what heaven has bestowed upon people. It seems that entrepreneurship is not difficult. However, after gaining the world, pride and indulgence were rampant, and the people needed rest and labor did not stop. The people were already impoverished and extravagant, and the decline of the country often began like this. Compared to entrepreneurship, Shoucheng is more difficult." A group of civil and military officials saw these two big shots expressing different opinions, but it seemed that what they said was very reasonable, and they immediately fell into contemplation. It is obvious that there is no standard answer to this question, it is just a matter of opinion. Li Shimin saw the two of them arguing and smiled slightly, saying, "Xianling followed me to pacify the world and went through countless hardships and narrowly escaped death multiple times, so he personally experienced the difficulties of entrepreneurship. And Xuanqing helped me stabilize the world, putting in a lot of effort every day to worry about the signs of extravagance and debauchery, and falling into the mud pit of danger. Therefore, I understand the difficulty of achieving success. Now that the difficulties of starting a business have passed, we must be cautious with the nobles to succeed in this difficult task." Xuanqing is the character of Wei Zheng. "Your Majesty, it is holy and wise." Upon hearing these words, a group of civil and military officials from the Tai Chi Hall stepped out one after another, all in unison with the Tao. Fang Jun followed Li Tai around for about a quarter of an hour and finally arrived at his destination. Chongji Hall. The Imperial Academy of the Great Tang Dynasty was divided into 5 halls and 6 halls, among which the 5 halls were the Museum Hall, the Cuisine Hall, the Classics Hall, the Classics Book Hall, and the Shengui Hall. The 6 halls are justice, reverence for ambition, dedication, cultivation, sincerity, and recklessness. Fang Jun strode in and, following the vague memory in his mind, found his seat. He knelt on both legs, pursed his buttocks, and lay on the low table before taking a nap. At this time, due to the great fusion of Hu and Han bloodlines, whose stools had also begun to flow into the central plains, but kneeling still remained mainstream. The other people in the hall have long been accustomed to his lazy and rude behavior, and no one in the entire Guangzhou knows that Fang Erlang is just an ignorant and incompetent mallet. Fourth brother, look at him. Princess Gaoyang Li Shu couldn't help but feel angry when she saw this scene, her eyebrows arched, and her beautiful and refined face was full of bitterness. Thinking that her future husband would be such an ignorant and foolish person, her heart felt as if someone had stabbed her fiercely, and a piercing pain instantly surged in her heart. My Li Shu's son. Law can only be a great hero who can write to pacify the world and wield martial arts to conquer the world. As for this useless black-faced god, get out of my princess's way. Even if I die, I will never marry him. 17 younger sisters, your marriage to Erlang was decided by the emperor. Well. Fourth brother is also helpless. At this moment, Li Tai also looked embarrassed. To be honest, Erlang in this room is indeed a scoundrel, but there is no other way. Who would let him have a powerful Zaifu father? Alright, 17 sister, come over here and sit down. Just then, not far away, there was a young girl of 17 or 8 years old, with a graceful figure, beautiful facial features, and gentle temperament. She reached out her snow-white wrist and waved at Li Shu, saying in a coquettish voice. Her voice is gentle and gentle, as beautiful as a spring of water, refreshing the heart. Sister, I hate this big hammer. I don't want this black-faced god to be my son. In law. Li Shu knelt down in front of the young girl, turned her head pitifully, and pleaded with tearful eyes, "Sister is the eldest princess. Father loves you the most. How about you help your sister beg father to cancel this marriage?" "That's right, this young girl is Princess Li Lizzie of Chang'e. My birth mother is the eldest grandson of the current empress, Wugo. The eldest daughter of the current emperor Li Shimin. 17 sisters, as the saying goes, you have no joking words. Your father is the ruler of a country. With such constant changes in orders, where is the majesty of the emperor?" Li Lizzie shook her head with a bitter smile. "Moreover, don't forget, 17 sisters, if your father withdraws from your marriage, where is the Zhifang family? Where is the Zhifang phase?" Upon hearing these words, Li Shu's pretty face turned pale like paper. Smart as she is, Li Lizzie analyzed it a bit and recognized the pros and cons. Chapter 5. Mathematical Master Wang Xiaotong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It can be said that once this marriage is cancelled, it will be extremely detrimental to the prestige of the father and the reputation of the Fang family. It seems impossible for father to cancel this marriage. As for the Fang family, it is even less likely to initiate a cancellation. After all, disobeying the imperial decree will result in a complete execution of the entire family. Li Shu couldn't help but feel a mix of flavors and a bewildered expression on her face as she thought of this. I can foresee that my future life will be a darkness. This heartbroken appearance made Li Lizzie feel heartbroken, but she was also helpless. After all, the fate of her parents and the words of the matchmaker were beyond their control in this marriage matter. Not long after, an old man wearing a Confucian robe and gray hair slowly walked in from outside the hall. "Hello, Master Wang." The people in the hall stood up to pay their respects when they saw the newcomer. Sit down." Wang Xiaotong nodded in satisfaction as he looked at the group of imperial relatives and noble children below the stage. Wang Xiaotong, a PhD in mathematics from the Imperial Academy, was a famous mathematician in the early Tang Dynasty. Alas, this house's Erlang is really too muddy to support the wall. When he saw a figure in the crowd lying on the low table, snoring and sleeping, he couldn't help but let out a sigh in his heart. How could Fang Xuanling give birth to such a despicable son, as he is considered the prime minister of the current dynasty, talented and knowledgeable? What a sin! Immediately, he turned his gaze back and ignored it, starting to explain mathematics to the audience below. Hu! Lu! After speaking for a quarter of an hour, Wang Xiaotong could no longer continue, for no other reason than that Fang Jun's snoring was too loud. Bang! Wang Zhao's gray beard trembled uncontrollably, and he slammed the bamboo ruler in his hand onto the podium with a loud bang. When everyone in the hall saw this scene, they couldn't help but shudder with fear and their necks shrank. Those who can sit here are basically royal relatives, noble children, and even princes and princesses among them. How prestigious their identities are. But after all, Wang Xiaotong is their teacher. Even if they have a noble status, they dare not act recklessly in front of their teachers. Only Fang Jun, who is not afraid of heaven and earth, is an exception. This black charcoal head is going to be unlucky. It's best to drive this black charcoal head out of the prison this time. Upon seeing this, Li Shu couldn't help but secretly rejoice. If Fang Jun was expelled from the Imperial Academy this time, perhaps he could tell his father to cancel this marriage. Thinking of this, her delicate and beautiful lips couldn't help but slightly curl up, and a pair of eyes like autumn water flashed with a happy expression. Li Lizzie on the side couldn't help but shake her head and smile bitterly when she saw the situation. It seems that my 17th sister's rejection of Fang Jun far exceeds my imagination. If these two people really want to get married, how will they live their lives in the future? Erlang, wake up quickly. Li Tai, who was kneeling on the side, pulled at Fang Jun, who was sleeping soundly, and urgently reminded him. What's going on? Did we finish school and have lunch? Let's go. Fang Jun, who was having a beautiful dream, was pulled by him and woke up in an instant. He rubbed his sleepy eyes with his hand and stood up groggily. This room Erlang is indeed a silly guy, big stick hammer. When everyone saw this scene, they couldn't help but twitch their lips and look speechless. Fang Erlang, you're reckless. Wang Xiaotong saw this thug being so reckless and not showing any concern for himself. He was furious and quickly walked up to Fang Jun, shouting uncontrollably in anger. Lying trough. Who is this old man? Why so angry? Wang Xiaotong's loud roar extinguished Fang Jun's last trace of drowsiness. Erlang, this is Wang Fuzi. He is a PhD in mathematics from the National Academy of Sciences. Don't be rude. Li Tai quickly reminded Fang Jun with a bewildered expression on his face. I'll go, so this old man is a teacher from the National Academy of Sciences. Upon hearing this, Fang Jun was immediately startled. As a student, he slept during other people's class hours, so he did not follow classroom discipline and disrespected his teachers. No matter how he said it, it was his own fault first. When Fang Jun thought of this, he immediately felt ashamed. He was about to say a few soft words to apologize, but his mind suddenly flashed with a flash of inspiration. Oh, yes. The person in front of me is a PhD in mathematics from the National Academy of Sciences. If I could take this opportunity to fool around in this classroom, I wouldn't have to come to class early in the future. If Li Shimin were to learn about this, he would definitely think he was a helpless ado, and perhaps even take the initiative to cancel his marriage with Gao Yang, that girl. This is simply the best of both worlds. Thinking of this, Fang Jun almost jumped up and applauded for his intelligence. Fang Erlang, what are you laughing at? Wang Xiaotong saw that the rascal in front of him seemed to have not heard what he said, but instead stood there laughing foolishly. He felt a sudden sensation in his heart. He heard that this kid was injured in a horse fall a while ago and broke his head. Look at the abnormal appearance of this kid in front of him, wouldn't he really fall into an idiot? That. Mr. Wang is really sorry. The reason why I dozed off just now was entirely because this arithmetic is too simple for a young man, and there is no need to waste time on it. Fang Jun chuckled. What? Mathematics is too simple for you. Wang Xiaotong felt a little relieved when he heard his previous apology, but when he heard the latter one, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. It seems that this kid really broke his head and started talking nonsense. The rest of the people in the lobby looked at each other with a strange expression on their faces. This room Erlang is not really foolish, is he? Otherwise, how could you say such a terrible thing? Fang Xiang has indeed given birth to a good son. Changsun Wuji looked at Fang Xuanling, whose face was as black as the bottom of a pot, standing in the corner of the gate of Chongji Hall. He blinked and whispered teasingly. You. Fang Xuanling was so angry that she couldn't speak when she saw him mocking her so much. Led by Li Shimin, he remained expressionless and silently watched the scene, without knowing what he was thinking. Humph, Fang Jun, you just said that arithmetic is too easy for you, isn't it? Wang Xiaotong glared at the boy in front of him, took a few deep breaths, suppressed his anger, gritted his teeth, and asked coldly. Nature. Fang Jun looked relaxed and smiled slightly. Erlang, don't talk nonsense. Apologize to the master quickly. Li Tai, who was sitting next to him, suddenly became anxious and quickly persuaded him. If it weren't for the fact that the boy's father was Zaifu Fang Xuanling, he wanted to draw a clear line with the boy. What a shame. Apologize. If it's also wrong to be honest, then Fang Jun has nothing to say. Apologize to Mr. Wang. Fang Jun said with a look of grievance. You. Okay. 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 Wang Xiaotong couldn't help but laugh angrily when he heard this. Since you said that arithmetic is too easy for you, then I will set a question to test you. If you can answer it, then I won't argue with you about this matter today. Chapter 6. Surprisingly, this big hammer still doesn't look up to this princess. It's simply ridiculous. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Fang Jun, how dare you confront Mr. Wang in public? You are so disrespectful, you are a complete scoundrel. Just then, a loud shout came from outside the door of Chongji Hall. See your majesty. Farewell to father. The people in the hall quickly followed the sound and saw a tall and burly middle-aged man dressed in yellow uniforms, with a tough, domineering and elegant face, angrily walking in. When they saw the visitor, everyone couldn't help but be surprised. How did your majesty come to the Imperial Academy? While everyone was shocked, they all bowed and saluted. Is this handsome uncle the current Emperor Li Shimin? Fang Jun looked up and down at this influential figure, known as the One Emperor for eternity by later generations, and his heart was deeply moved, unable to come to his senses for a long time. You rebellious son! If you don't bow to your majesty soon. Fang Xuanling, who was following Li Shimin, shouted angrily when he saw his own son, who looked indifferent. Grassman Fang Jun pays his respects to his majesty. Long live, long live, long live. Upon hearing his cheap father's angry shout, Fang Jun instantly regained his senses and quickly bowed to Li Shimin. Long live, long live, long live. Everyone was taken aback when they heard his unique words. Even if he reacted, this room's Erlang was really shameless, right? This kind of flattery can be said so confidently. Well, although this kid is a bit of a jerk, what he said is quite catchy. At this moment, when Li Shimin heard the following sentence, although his face remained expressionless, his heart was filled with joy. Standing on the side, Fang Xuanling couldn't help but secretly cover his face, thinking that he was upright and never flattered. How could you have given birth to such a scoundrel? Meanwhile, Changsun Wuji on the side had a strange expression on his face, as if he still had the potential to become a sycophant. Look at this flattery, I'm not as good as him. Your Majesty, Fang Jun is shameless in his words. The old minister is about to give him a test to teach him. Can you please give him a testimony? This young man from the province will not admit defeat later. Wang Xiaotong arched his hand at Li Shimin and said seriously. You rebellious person. Where on earth do you have the confidence to dare to challenge Mr. Wang? If you don't want to embarrass yourself, just kneel down and kowtow and admit your mistake. Mr. Wang has a lot of resources, so he will definitely not argue with you, a yellow-mouthed child. Fang Xuanling, who was standing by, panicked when she heard that Mr. Wang had suggested that His Majesty be the intermediary for this teaching exam. She quickly stepped forward and kicked Fang Jun, shouting loudly. Why kick me? The child didn't lie, this math is already very simple. Fang Jun patted a big footprint on his robe, his face full of dissatisfaction. You villain. Fang Xiang doesn't need to be angry. Fang Xuanling was interrupted by Li Shimin's voice as he wanted to say more. Looking at Fang Jun with an unconvinced expression, he smiled slightly and said, Since you are so confident, let Mr. Wang test you a bit. Thank you very much, Your Majesty. Fang Jun arched his hand with gratitude on his face. However, Your Majesty, if the boy wins, can Your Majesty agree to one thing for the boy? What's up? Just tell me. Li Shimin said arrogantly. Could you please ask Your Majesty to cancel my marriage to Royal Highness Princess? Fang Jun turned to look at Li Shu, who was standing not far away and was very beautiful, and said with a worried face. To tell the truth, he is now extremely panicked and anxious. After all, this is a cruel man who kills his brother and his father for the throne. If I offend him, I won't lose my life. A scolding is inevitable, and he doesn't want to be spanked and not get out of bed for half a month. As expected, as soon as he said these words, the entire Chongji Hall fell silent in an instant, and the sound of needles falling could be heard. Everyone looked at him with a surprised expression on their faces. Is this room full of idiots? Dare to speak out of marriage in front of His Majesty, I really don't want to live. Fang Jun, you're bold. Gao Yang is a noble person with golden branches and jade leaves, and is of the highest status and appearance in the world. Her ability to marry you is a blessing that your wife, Fang has cultivated for several lifetimes. You dare to withdraw your marriage in public. Do you really think my sword is not good? Li Shimin said coldly as his face sank like water when he saw this young man say such bold and reckless words. The cold and piercing voice made the people in the hall shiver all over, as if they had instantly entered the icy winter, shivering all over. Your Majesty, it is precisely because the princess is too excellent and foolish to know that she is not worthy of the princess that. All right. Let's talk about this after the exam. Fang Jun wanted to say more when he was interrupted by the angry voice of Li Shimin. Surprisingly, this big hammer still doesn't look up to this princess. It's simply ridiculous. Li Shu's beautiful eyes, like autumn water, flashed with anger and glared fiercely at Fang Jun. If his gaze could kill someone, Fang Jun would probably have died hundreds of times. Mr. Wang, before taking the junior exam, can you let the boy test your level in mathematics and whether you have reached the level of taking the junior exam? Upon hearing this, Fang Jun was immediately overjoyed. He looked up at Wang Xiaotong, smiled slightly, and asked. How do you want to test it? Wang Xiaotong was furious when he saw this kid questioning him. He quickly took a few deep breaths to suppress his anger, so as not to lose his composure. He gritted his teeth and asked coldly. It's very simple, kid. There are a few math problems here. If Wang Laofu can solve them, then kid will be convinced and let Wang Laofu take the test. I don't know what your boss thinks. Fang Jun's eyes rolled and he spoke back. Hush. Upon hearing these words, everyone in the hall couldn't help but take a deep breath. This kid turned around and wanted to take the exam against Mr. Wang first. At this moment, Fang Xuanling heard his own son's words and felt extremely ashamed and angry. If it weren't for the fact that His Majesty is still standing here today, he would have wanted to go up and kick this ignorant villain to death, so as not to embarrass himself here. Just you ignorant and incompetent idiot, you actually want to take the math exam for the next generation, Wang Xiaotong. Pushi. Princess Li Shu of Gaoyang couldn't help but chuckle when she saw this black boy die like this. The rest of the people in the hall all had their cheeks twitching, looking as if they wanted to laugh but dared not. Erlang, do you want to think about it again? Mr. Wang is a great mathematician of his generation, and even if you give up now, it's not embarrassing. Li Tai, standing on the side, couldn't bear to watch anymore. He tugged at Fang Jun's sleeve and blinked incessantly. Give up. It doesn't exist. I don't have the word give up in my dictionary. Fang Jun shook his head with a confident and coaxing expression. Chapter 7. This. A generation of mathematicians surprisingly saluted Fang Erxing's disciples. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Where did this kid get his confidence? Surprisingly so confident. Li Shimin looked at the black boy in front of him with a skeptical expression, feeling puzzled. In his opinion, this kid is uneducated and full of martial arts. If it weren't for his father Fang Xuanling's loyalty to him and his hard work and high achievements for the sake of the Tang Dynasty, how could he marry his daughter to such a scoundrel? Ha ha ha. Then let's ask Erlang to come up with a question. Wang Xiaotong was overjoyed when he saw this kid in front of him speaking so shamelessly. He looked up at Fang Xuanling, who had an unattainable expression on his face, and laughed heartily, saying, Fang Xiang, you have really given birth to a good son. Changsun Wuji, standing beside him, quickly raised his hand to cover his mouth, afraid that he would laugh out loud. Okay. Please listen to the question, Mr. Wang. Fang Jun turned a blind eye to the contemptuous gazes cast upon him by the people around him and said loudly, I have 90.91 today. Just in time, I will buy 1,000 pairs, 9 pairs for 11.1, and 7 pairs for 4.1. How much are the pairs? What is the price? This question is translated in vernacular as, I bought 1,000 pears and fruits for 999.1, 9 pairs for 11.1, and 7 fruits for 4.1. How many pears and fruits each, and how much do you pay each? This after listening, Wang Xiaotong felt a thump in his heart. The rest of the audience in the hall immediately fell into contemplation after listening to this question. Li Lizzie and Li Shu's sisters in the crowd also showed their eyebrows slightly wrinkled, pursed their beautiful red lips, and immersed themselves in the answer to this question. In 15 minutes. I wonder if Mr. Wang has calculated the answer. Fang Jun looked at Wang Xiaotong, whose face was almost wrinkled into buns, and asked. Wang Xiaotong opened his mouth, unsure of how to answer. You rascal, this question is so difficult that Wang Laofu can't solve it for a while, which is normal. Fang Xuanling saw Wang Xiaotong feeling embarrassed and afraid that he wouldn't be able to save face, so she quickly stood up to make amends. Well, indeed. Kid, you can come up with another question. Li Shimin quickly nodded in agreement. I don't believe you have such a difficult problem, kid. Okay, then let's come up with another question. Mr. Wang, listen carefully. Fang Jun didn't care about this. He had a lot of math problems in his mind and spoke up again, walking alone on the street, carrying a pot to fetch wine, doubling the amount at the shop, drinking a bucket at the flour, 3 times at the shop and the flour, drinking all the wine in the pot and asking how much wine there is in the wine pot. This question is translated in vernacular. A person goes to the street to fetch wine. Every time they encounter a wine shop, they double the wine in the pot, and every time they encounter a flour, they drink a bucket of wine. This way, when they encounter a wine shop and a flour 3 times each, they drink all the wine in the pot and ask how much wine there is in the pot before. This room too is indeed despicable and shameless, and this question is obviously much more difficult than the previous one. After listening to this question, everyone suddenly twitched their lips and almost cursed Fang Jun's ancestors for 18 generations. Fang Jun, can you solve this question by yourself? I don't know from whom everyone heard these 2 questions, right? Li Shu glanced at him and smiled coldly. If you can't solve these 2 questions yourself, then you're just playing tricks. Yes. That's right, these 2 questions I heard from somewhere, you don't even know the answer yourself, and you dare to take them out to test others. It's just a laughingstock, just adding to your laughter. Yes, I don't think there's an answer to this question at all. It's probably fabricated by Fang Erxing. The people in the hall couldn't figure it out and were very embarrassed. At this moment, when they saw someone questioning them, their faces lit up and they all spoke in agreement. Does your Highness Royal Highness Princess think someone can't solve these 2 questions? Isn't it? Li Shu lifted her beautiful eyes and glanced at him, her pretty face filled with a look of disgust. Although Fang Jun's secret saliva swallowing action was concealed just now, she could see it clearly. This disciple. How disgusting. Fang Jun didn't argue about this either. He walked briskly to a low table where there were pens, ink, paper, and inkstones. He picked up a brush from the pen holder, dipped it in ink on the inkstone, and started splashing ink on a spread-out rice paper. When everyone saw the scene, they quickly gathered around. When they saw the handwriting of dragons and phoenixes dancing, they couldn't help but be stunned. Isn't it true that the second birthday rate in this room is uneducated and lacks skills? The handwriting and strokes in front of you are stretching and graceful, flying gracefully. At first glance, they look like beautiful women dancing gracefully, with the sharpness of a sword. The appearance is refreshing and smooth, with a super elegant demeanor. The thin and vigorous strokes resemble independent cranes. Look at this word, it is strong and powerful, like a silver hook and iron painting, with a momentum of founding a sect. That's right, what Fang Jun is writing now is the slim golden body of Emperor Huizong of Song. In later generations, due to his love for calligraphy, he was particularly fond of this thin gold body. Therefore, when he was in college, he enrolled in a calligraphy interest class and was already familiar with this thin gold body with ease. How could this be possible? The calligraphy of this black-faced god has reached this level. When Li Shu saw the handwriting of dragons and phoenixes dancing on the rice paper, her small mouth opened slightly in surprise, and her pretty face was filled with an incredulous expression. She was not the only one who was shocked. The faces of those present were all shocked. Looking at the thin and fleshy handwriting on the rice paper, their mouths were almost open enough to fit an egg in. Did this kid hide his clumsiness before? Li Shimon's heart was also turbulent at this moment, unable to calm down for a long time. 657 pears, worth 803 won, 343 fruits, worth 196 won. Just as everyone was shocked by Fang Jun's superb calligraphy, Wang Xiaotong pointed to the answers listed on the rice paper and exclaimed in surprise. Upon hearing this, everyone quickly looked in the direction he pointed out, and was immediately surprised that the answer was so easy to come up with. The answer is correct. However, what are these symbols? Why can't I understand any of them? Wang Xiaotong saw the answer and quickly calculated in his heart, sighing softly. However, when his gaze scanned the strange symbols on the rice paper that were curved like tadpole script, he suddenly looked bewildered. When Fang Jun saw the dense Arabic numerals on the rice paper, he instantly felt a headache. Just now, in order to act forced, I actually wrote out these Arabic numerals. What a mistake. This. It's not a symbol, it's just a simplified version of the number. Hee. This is not important, let's not mention it, let's not mention it. Fang Jun chuckled. He was really afraid that the old boy in front of him wouldn't give up and would dig deeper. No, your simplified version of numbers is of great benefit to mathematics. As long as Erlang can give some guidance, I will treat you as a disciple in the future. Wang Xiaotong, after all, is a master of mathematics. At first glance, he saw how important this simplified version of numbers is to mathematics. He took 2 steps back, bowed to Fang Jun, and said excitedly. This. A generation of mathematicians even saluted Fang Erxing's disciples. When everyone saw this scene, they were shocked beyond measure, their eyes almost falling to the ground. Chapter 8. Chaos still turns yellow, leaning against the east wind and going crazy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lying trough. This terrible old man is really bad, he actually wants me to lose my life. Upon seeing this, Fang Jun quickly dodged aside. The old man in front of him was more than enough to be his grandfather. How could he accept such a generous gift from him? Erlang, your simplified version of the numbers is really amazing. You can solve the answer in such a short time. Please teach me Erlang. Li Tai, standing by, looked at the densely packed so-called simplified version of the numbers on the rice paper with a burning gaze, his eyes filled with fervent urgency, said. The people in the hall were once again shocked and they saw that even the proud and knowledgeable king of Wei, Li Tai, had great admiration for this simplified version of numbers. This. It will take a long time. Even if I say this simple version of the number now, you probably won't understand it for a while. How about this? How about waiting for someone to go back and organize it into a book, and then slowly speaking to you? Upon seeing the passionate gazes of the two, Fang Jun immediately looked helpless. It seemed that he couldn't hide the Arabic numerals. Humph. Your Fang Erlang's reputation for being ignorant and inexperienced has already spread throughout Guangzhou. I don't know where this simplified version of the numbers came from. Ignorant and upright, how dare you boast and organize it into a book? You're not afraid of making people laugh your teeth out. Changsun Wuji, who had been silent all along, saw this kid so conspicuous, his eyes flashed with a fierce look, and he said coldly. The chaotic stripes have not yet turned yellow, leaning against the east wind and becoming wild. Let the flying flowers cover the sun and moon, I wonder if there is clear frost in heaven and earth. Fang Jun saw the old boy repeatedly mocking and hitting him, his eyes rolled, and he muttered loudly. Hush. As soon as this poem was written, everyone in the lobby took a deep breath. This room Erlang is really going to turn the tables. How dare you write poetry in public to mock the uncle of the dynasty, Changsun Wuji? For example, in the previous sentence, the disorderly willow branches have not yet turned yellow, but when leaning against the east wind, they become wild. Literally, it can be explained as: the disorderly willow branches have not yet turned yellow, and they dance wildly under the blowing of the east wind. This sentence is sarcastic and contemptuous, describing how Luanzio used the trend, bared his teeth and claws, and acted recklessly. In fact, it has another meaning, satirizing the greedy and cunning villain who became arrogant when he achieved his goals. How similar is Changsun Wuji, who is now in a state of power, with one person below and 10,000 people above. Why can Changsun Wuji summon the wind and rain in the court? Isn't it because his sister is the current empress? This is to nail Changsun Wuji on the pillar of shame, it will leave a lasting impression. Pop. At this moment, Fang Xuanling quickly stepped forward and raised his hand to fiercely hit his son, a rascal, on the head, causing a sudden shock. Oh my! Fang Jun let out a painful cry and quickly dodged, covering his head and looking at his cheap father with a look of grievance. Why are you hitting a child? You rebellious son! How dare you hide? I'll see if someone kills you. Fang Xuanling was furious when he saw that this rascal dared to hide. He rolled up his sleeves and prepared to give this kid a few harsh blows. Xuanling, stop it. Li Shimin saw that the father and son were about to perform a full martial arts performance, so he quickly spoke out to stop them. Your Majesty, Fang Jun is disrespectful and dares to write poetry to mock my humble ministers. His heart is worthy of punishment. Changsun Wuji looked at the black boy in front of him, eager to rush forward and strangle him. Auxiliary equipment, why lower your status and vent your anger with a yellow-mouthed child? It's not worth it. Li Shimin glared at Fang Jun fiercely and said. Boy, please don't fall into my hands. Changsun Wuji saw that his brother-in-law did not want to pursue this matter, so he had no choice but to give up. How could this black-faced god write poetry? It's impossible, he must have spent money to buy it. Well, it must be like this. Li Shu looked at Fang Jun, who was in the limelight, her red lips clenched, and she thought with hatred. It seems that my future brother-in-law is not as bad as the rumors in the market say, he is still a bit talented and knowledgeable. A hint of surprise flashed in Li Lizzie's phoenix eyes as she stood aside. After all, she is an outsider, so she has a more thorough understanding than her own sister Gao Yang. This poem can be plagiarized, but Fang Jun's superb calligraphy is what she saw with her own eyes just now, and she cannot fake it at all. Mr. Wang, do you still need to set a question to test for a younger boy? Fang Jun asked. Don't kill me, Erlang. With Erlang's accomplishments in mathematics, he can be my teacher. Wang Xiaotong blushed and waved his hand repeatedly. Your Majesty, in this competition, the boy narrowly won. Your Majesty has just agreed to the boy's terms, should we fulfill them? Upon hearing this, Fang Jun quickly looked at Li Shimin with a hopeful expression on his face. Kid, did you remember wrong? I just said I'll wait until the competition is over, and I didn't agree to the conditions you said. Li Shimin looked at the hopeful expression on the kid's face, and quickly lost his temper. He replied coldly. Your Majesty, as the ruler of a country, you have eaten your words and become fat. Fang Jun was immediately dumbfounded. Kid, when did I eat my words and become fat? You can ask everyone present if I agreed to your terms just now. Li Shimin sneered coldly. Fang Erlang, you dare. How dare you question your majesty? That's right, Fang Erlang, don't you want your brain anymore? As soon as he finished speaking, the onlookers all spoke in agreement. Holy crap, it seems that I am still too young, this old man has set a trap for me. At this moment, Fang Jun was about to cry without tears. He carefully recalled it and realized that it seemed that Li Ergang had not really agreed to his conditions. Everything was just taken for granted. Father, Gao Yang doesn't want to marry him. I earnestly request father to retract his decree of marriage. Li Shu saw this and became anxious. She thought Fang Jun would lose this time, so she didn't have much hope for his divorce. What she didn't expect was that Fang Jun actually won. Just now, I secretly rejoiced that I could finally not marry this black kid, but I never expected that this matter would return to the original point. This marriage still cannot be terminated. Your marriage has already been decided. Don't bring it up again in the future. Li Shimin replied with a resolute expression on his face. After speaking, he ignored everyone and turned around and left Changshatang with great strides. Time flew by, and Fang Junhua turned from depression to drowsiness. When he woke up, he found it was time to finish school. He rubbed his sore neck, moved his hands and feet, and then stood up and left Chongji Hall with Li Tai, heading back home. Two brothers, please don't fight anymore. If you fight again, you will kill Auntie. Get lost. You bitch, she's your mother, not ours. You can't do this. Woo woo. Fang Jun, who had not been far away from the Imperial Academy, suddenly heard a sound of punches and kicks in his ear, including the faint sound of conversations between men and women. Cough cough. Stop fighting, can't I give you the money back? Then came the woman's pleading for mercy. Lying trough. In broad daylight, there are even people robbing. Fang Jun took a few quick steps forward, and when he heard it clearly, he suddenly became furious. These two scumbags, even if it's robbery, they even dealt such a heavy blow to a weak woman. Chapter 9. Beating the Wu Brothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bold thief, take a punch from me. Fang Jun, furious, rushed into the alley and punched one of the men hard on the back of the head. Ah! The man was caught off guard and suddenly felt his head buzzing. He stumbled and fell to the ground, moaning in pain. Who? The other man saw someone behind him carrying out a surprise attack and quickly turned around, shouting with a wary and angry expression. It's your grandpa and me. Fang Jun didn't stop and rushed forward, lifting his foot with a fierce kick. Speaking of which, the original owner's physical fitness was really good. He was as strong as a calf, with muscles all over his body tense and strong, as if he had endless strength. The man was kicked away by him and smashed fiercely onto the wall of the alley. With a wow sound, he spat out blood. Auntie, how are you? Are you okay? Meiniang, don't worry. Mom is okay. After he laid down these two men, he turned his head and saw a woman in a linen dress, covered in injuries, curled up in the corner of the wall. Beside him was a young girl who was sobbing. Although the two women had their backs facing each other, their curvaceous and graceful figures were also very eye-catching and eye-catching. Wait. What did the woman call that girl just now? Meiniang. This shouldn't be so coincidental, right? Upon hearing the words, Meiniang, Fang Jun suddenly felt a sudden surge in his heart. Isn't this young girl in front of him the legendary one? Are you okay? Fang Jun suppressed his nervousness and walked up to the two women, asking. Thank you, young master, for taking action with righteousness. The girl turned her head with gratitude and said in a coquettish voice. The voice is gentle and gentle, with a wind chime-like sound, softly whispering. With a hint of coquettishness and a hint of allure, it sounds like a yellow warbler coming out of a valley, kites singing and phoenixes chirping, clear and clear yet gentle. If this girl were to be a voice actress in later generations, she would definitely be able to go viral with her voice. Upon hearing the heavenly voice, Fang Jun was moved, but when he saw the girl's face clearly, he stood there in a daze. This girl is about 14 or 5 years old, with black hair as silky as silk fluttering in the wind, slender phoenix eyebrows, a pair of eyes as bright as stars and the moon, a delicate Xiong nose, pink cheeks slightly dizzy, cherry-like red lips dripping, a flawless melon seed face shy and affectionate, tender snowy skin and beautiful skin tone, and a lightweight yet plump figure. This is a living fairy who emerged from the brocade painting. Cough cough. Thank you so much, Duke. The woman, covered in injuries, slowly stood up with the help of the girl. Her face was pale as paper, but she still managed to squeeze out a smile and saluted Fang Junying. Meiniang thanks you, young master. Young master, why don't you leave quickly? These two older brothers of mine are the ones who will repay their grievances. I don't want to implicate young master for no reason. The young girl exclaimed urgently after giving her a blessing. May I ask if your father is a warrior of the Ying kingdom? Fang Jun asked tentatively with a nervous expression on his face. It's my father. Does the young master know my father? The girl was taken aback and immediately replied in a coquettish voice. Turns out this girl in front of me is really Empress Wu Zetian. No wonder this girl looks so bad for the country and the people. Confirming his speculation, Fang Jun's uneasy mood just calmed down a bit. After all, this person in front of me is just a little girl at this moment, and it's still a long way from turning black and transforming. Guogong is a generous person, generous in his wealth, with a strong sense of loyalty and righteousness. He has a great reputation. Although I don't know him, I have admired him for a long time. Fang Jun's face became solemn, with a look of remembrance on his face. In May of the 9th year of the Zhenguan reign, 635 AD, Emperor Li Yuan passed away. Upon hearing the news, Samurai Yi, who was serving as the governor of Jingzhou, fell ill with grief. Li Shimin repeatedly sent famous doctors to treat him, but Samurai Yi passed away at the age of 59 due to ineffective treatment. Woo. If I were still here, how could I and Auntie be? Wu Meiniang thought of her and Auntie's miserable life now, and her tears flowed down like broken pearls. If I is still here, he will definitely drive you two sluts out of the house. The man who was punched in the back of the head lay down for a while before regaining his breath. He stumbled up and roared at Wu Meiniang. You're talking nonsense. I loves me and my mother the most. Wu Meiniang looked angry and scolded in a coquettish voice. This slut has a bad character and dares to flirt around outside. It's a disgrace to my martial arts family. The man who was kicked wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and pointed at Yang, saying viciously. Pop. Bastard. How dare you be disrespectful to your elders? Fang Jun couldn't bear to look at him anymore, as he stepped forward and raised his hand with a big mouth. Fang Erlang, this is a private matter of our martial arts family. What does it have to do with you? The young man next to him, dressed in brocade and slightly short and thin, looked at Fang Jun with malicious eyes and said angrily. Do you know me? Upon hearing this, Fang Jun was momentarily taken aback and immediately understood. It seemed that he had asked some nonsense. These two people should be Wu Meiniang's half-brother. Wu Yuanqing and Wu Yuanshuang. They are all dandies from Chang'an City, who doesn't know who? Fang Er, don't pretend to be confused in front of us. The slightly older and taller young man next to him looked angry. Although she is not your biological mother, in terms of seniority, you should also shout auntie. But your brothers dare to beat and scold her. She is so unfilial. She is simply inferior to a beast. I really have control over this matter today, Fang Jun. How are you doing? Fang Jun protected Wu Meiniang and the other two behind him, pointing at the Wu brothers and giving them a scolding. You. Wu Yuanqing felt a surge of anger upon hearing these words. And Wu Yuanshuang is even more like a quail, at a loss. What can we do about this? I was already at a disadvantage, but it's hard to say. I can't win the battle. Wu Yuanqing looked at his half-sister who was hiding behind Fang Jun, and a malicious expression flashed in his eyes. He said fiercely, I didn't expect you, a slut, to quietly climb onto Fang Erlang's bed before getting married. It's really a disgrace to the reputation of our martial arts family. I is not here, today I will replace I in exercising the family law and drive you, this slut, out of my martial arts family. Big brother, don't talk nonsense. Upon hearing this, Wu Meiniang's face turned pale. I only met Fang Gongzi for the first time today. That's as dirty as Big Brother said. Since ancient times, a woman's reputation for chastity has been greater than heaven. If this is proven true, her entire life will be ruined. Even if Wu Meiniang's mind was firm, upon hearing her elder brother's slander, the last line of defense in her heart instantly crumbled and completely collapsed. Delang, how could you slander Meiniang so much? You're trying to force Meiniang to death. You. Yang, who was already injured, trembled with anger upon hearing this. Delang. Wu Dalong. Upon hearing these words, Fang Jun, who was standing on the side, immediately had a strange expression on his face. Hee. If she's really innocent, why would Fang Er help you two stand out? Wu Yuanshuang looked at his stepmother with a fierce expression and a cold smile. Chapter 10. Wu Meiniang with a heartbroken heart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Erlang, you. Yang Shi heard this and suddenly became angry, unsure of how to refute it. Surprisingly, the two older brothers insisted on driving me and Auntie out of the house, leaving Meiniang speechless. Let's go. At this moment, Wu Meiniang's face turned pale and her heart was as dead as ashes. The last trace of nostalgia for the Wu family dissipated in an instant. Since I's death, my two half-brothers have always regarded me and my mother as a thorn in my side. They often speak ill of each other and fight and kick each other. If it weren't for their beauty, they would have received a lot of dowry money when they got married. I guess they would have kicked me and my mother out of the house long ago. The Wu family is engaged in timber trading and comes from a wealthy family. But my two older brothers are ignorant and inexperienced. They only pursue pleasure and have no idea about the family's business. They have already almost defeated the martial arts family. Now he is even more insane, completely disregarding the feelings of his siblings. He even wants to sell himself to a 60-year-old man as a concubine for the dowry money of 100 guan. Standing on the side, Fang Jun couldn't help but sigh when he saw that the future queen had been forced into such a situation by his two bastard brothers. Perhaps it was because of this tragic and unfortunate experience during her teenage years that Wu Mimi later developed a character of using all means to achieve her goals. In order to become the emperor and wield the highest power of the empire, Wu Meiniang has walked all the way, not only stained with the blood of political enemies, but also many of her relatives have died in her hands. The most representative of them are the two people in front of us. Wu Yuanqing and Wu Yuanshuang. After Wu Meiniang declared herself emperor, the first person she dealt with was her two scoundrels. Indeed, without the suffering of others, do not advise others to be kind. Fang Jun originally wanted to help out a few words, but after some thought, he still remained silent. After all, this is someone else's family matter, and as an outsider, should not have intervened in this matter. Now, because of my help, I was caught by the Wu brothers and kicked out the Wu Mimi couple from the house. Humph, Meiniang, you said it yourself. Big brother didn't force you, don't regret it. Wu Yuanqing didn't expect his half-sister to have such a firm mind. He had originally thought that he could use the trump card of driving her out of the house to suppress her and let him control her. Now it seems that he has miscalculated, but his words have already been spoken. It is impossible to retrieve them, and he can only walk a long way to the end. Meiniang, don't be impulsive. How can you survive as a weak woman after leaving the martial arts family? Yang Shi next to her was startled and quickly spoke out to advise. Auntie, do we have a way out if we stay in the Wu family? Wu Meiniang smiled sadly. Upon hearing these words, Yang immediately looked bewildered. Yes, even if they stayed in the Wu family, they would eventually be sold as goods by the two brothers of the Wu family, and the outcome would not be much better. Pooh! Two ignorant sluts. Wu Yuanqing spat fiercely at the mother and daughter, then the two brothers helped each other and walked into the Wu mansion. With a bang, the door closed and he ignored the three of them. Mom, what's wrong with you? Don't scare Meiniang. Just then, a cry of surprise came from behind Fang Jun. He quickly turned around and looked back, only to see Yang Shi covered in injuries. Her beautiful face was as pale as paper, her eyes tightly closed, and her thin and slender body fell into Wu Meiniang's arms, fainting. Alas, this is really a house leak. It happens to rain continuously at night, and the hemp rope is carefully picked and broken. The Yang family was already covered in injuries, but now they have been kicked out of their home by the Wu brothers. Under the dual torment of their mental and physical bodies, they finally collapsed under unbearable pressure. Miss Wu, why don't you follow me back to the mansion? There is a doctor at the mansion. Fang Jun said. Fang Gongzi's kindness, I understand. Wu Meiniang shook her head as if feeling disheartened. Then, she shook her head and picked up the unconscious Yang Shi, staggering forward. Fang Jun looked at the thin and stubborn figure slowly moving forward and was momentarily stunned. Bang! Just as he was stunned, Wu Meiniang, who had not yet walked far, fell to the ground due to exhaustion. Fang Jun hurriedly chased after Wu Meiniang, helped her up, and urgently asked, Miss Wu, are you okay? Wu. At this moment, Wu Meiniang was only a 13 or 14-year-old girl. She couldn't bear such a blow and threw herself into Fang Jun's arms, as if finding a safe harbor, tears streaming down her face. Fang Jun lightly patted her back with a look of heartache on his face. Miss Wu, I know you don't want to follow someone back to the mansion because you're afraid of people gossiping. Otherwise, there's a restaurant in my house around the corner ahead. You should go and settle down there first. Don't worry, after your aunt's injury is healed, whether you go or stay is up to you to decide. After a long time, Fang Jun saw that she was about to vent, so he spoke up. Well, thank you very much, young master. Wu Meiniang blushed and left his embrace, biting her red lips for a long time before nodding. They were both women, and now they have been kicked out of the house penniless. There is no place for the two of them to stay in this huge Chang'an city. It's getting dark now, can't they really camp on the streets? Fang Jun breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that this girl had finally agreed. He was really afraid that this girl would become stubborn. Then, Fang Jun carried the unconscious Yang on his back and walked towards the nearby Fang family restaurant. Wu Meiniang bit her silver teeth, her heart stiffened, and she quickly followed suit. Quickly, Fang Jun found an upper room in the restaurant and settled the two women down. Then, he asked the restaurant staff to bring a doctor to treat Yang's injury. Having been busy for a long time, when it was getting late, Fang Jun finally left. The next day, in the Fangfu Hall. Lang Jun, next month is my grandmother's birthday. Are you ready with this birthday gift? Du Shi looked at Fang Yiji at the dinner table and asked. Don't worry, madam. The gift has already been prepared. Fang Yiji picked up a teacup and took a sip of the tea soup, casually replying. Oh, what gift did the husband prepare? Can you tell me about it? Du Shi saw her husband's perfunctory attitude, and a hint of disappointment appeared on her beautiful face. Some calligraphy and paintings, and... Is it calligraphy and painting again? I give these gifts every year. Does Lang Juanji know how my sister-in-law and aunt talk about concubines behind their backs? What do you women and Taoist families know? These calligraphy and paintings are 100 times more elegant than those copper-smelling things. At this moment, Du Shi saw that her husband was still as rigid as ever, and was instantly angry with tears in her beautiful eyes and a look of grievance. Every time my grandmother's birthday, my brother's and sister's birthday gifts are moved to the Du family's mansion in carts, but what about my birthday gifts? Every time it's just some worthless calligraphy and painting. My husband is just a bookworm. Apart from reading books every day, he doesn't care about family matters at all.